Welcome to the Monster in My Head show, a podcast where we talk to real people about the real insecurities and issues that a lot of us deal with and discuss unique ways to overcome them. My name is Bree, and today we have a very special episode. I'm actually not talking to a guest today, but we are going to be talking about a topic that I'm very passionate about. And one thing I want to mention even before we get into this episode is that this was inspired by a song that I have that is being released on Friday. If you're watching this in the future, it's been released. Exciting. And the song is all about enthusiastic consent. It is called Rough Lovin'. It's kind of a silly song, but it's a cool song. So if you want to check it out, go to the link in the description. You can either pre-save it or listen to it there. I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of this episode, but let's dive right in. So this episode is all about enthusiastic consent, but more so about boundaries. So this is something that for me when I was younger, I had a really hard time with. Thankfully, over the years, I have grown a lot in this area. And so in kind of the spirit of these episodes, I wanted to share some of the things that I've learned with you. Hopefully they can be helpful to you if you are struggling in the area of creating boundaries for yourself and maintaining those boundaries. Two very different things. And if you feel like you just need a little bit of guidance, obviously take what I say with a grain of salt. My answers will not be right for everyone, but these are just the things that have worked for me. I also want to be really clear that these tips are for men, women, non-binary people, people of any gender identity. It is not just women who experience situations where they feel pressured or where their boundaries are crossed. It is everyone across the spectrum. So if this is something that you're dealing with and you feel like you don't fit into like the norm of when there are articles that talk about this, just know that you are welcome here and that this conversation is for you as well. The first tip that I have about establishing and maintaining your boundaries is to believe that you are worthy of those boundaries. This is something that I really struggled with when I was younger, when I was kind of first getting into all of this, because I didn't really feel like my feelings mattered. So if I was in a situation where I felt really uncomfortable, there were a lot of times where I kind of just let things happen because I didn't feel like my enjoyment in the process was worth standing up for. I didn't feel like, my feelings mattered. I felt like someone else's feelings mattered more than mine did. And so there were things that would happen that I would feel uncomfortable with, but I was just kind of like, well, I guess. So the first thing to really internalize is that your feelings matter. Your experience matters. In whatever situation you're in, you are one half or one third, one fourth, whatever you like doing. I'm not judging, but let's say in a kind of a average situation, you are one half of this experience. And if you are not enjoying it, that is not a good experience. So if there is any point where you feel uncomfortable, value yourself and value your feelings enough to put an end to it. The second tip I have is to be overly communicative. So something, again, in my past is there'd be times where I would be with somebody, and especially maybe someone I didn't know super well, and I would kind of just expect them to see that I was uncomfortable. And in a perfect world, someone would read your body language and be like, oh, this person's not enjoying this. But a lot of times if people are very in the moment, or if they don't want to read your body language, they're just kind of wanting to do what they're going to do, they are not going to take those cues. And also, it's really not fair for us to expect someone to read our minds, unfortunately. So, if you're in a situation and you are feeling uncomfortable, the best thing to do is just to communicate up front right away. Something that I used to do is I would kind of tiptoe around and be like, well, I don't know. I mean, but I've gotten to a point now where if I feel any sort of way, if I feel any sort of feelings of being uncomfortable or feeling taken advantage of or feeling manipulated or whatever, or just that I'm not into it, I will just straight up say, hey, not into this right now. And that's that. And that is okay to do. That is better to do because then you're being upfront, straightforward. There's no way that people can misconstrue what you mean because you're saying exactly what you mean. And that kind of goes into the third tip, which is don't worry about hurting someone's feelings. I had such a hard time with this for a while because I was kind of like, oh, I don't want them to feel rejected. I don't want them to feel blah, 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 whatever. Don't worry about it. As long as you're being kind and as long as you are being firm, you don't have to worry about hurting someone's feelings. Because the thing is that if you're with someone who is worth being with, you communicating that you're not into something, they're going to be like, ah, cool, gotcha, no worries. If you're with someone who maybe really isn't worth your time, they might try to make you feel guilty about it. They might be like, oh, that like hurts my feelings. And that showcases more about who they are rather than about who you are. So in any situation where you're feeling uncomfortable, just be super upfront and be communicative about what you want and what you don't want. That goes seamlessly into the next tip, which is if someone tries to manipulate you, tries to guilt you, or tries to pressure you when you're in a situation, even if you had said yes to that situation initially and change your mind, leave. A person is not worth your time. I've been in this situation more times than I would like to admit, where I would be hanging out with someone or talking with somebody, and then things would start happening and I would start feeling uncomfortable. I would communicate that I was feeling uncomfortable, and that person would try to manipulate me. And it has worked, a lot more in my past than now. But they would kind of use that guilt of just like, oh no, just stay a little bit longer. No, don't worry. We don't have to do anything. And then they would continue to do what they're doing. And those are the kinds of people that, again, are not worth your time. If they're treating you like that, that means they don't respect you. So if they try to guilt you, if they try to shame you, if they try to pressure you, that can just be right there a red flag where you'd be like, all right, then I'm uninterested in continuing this. So I think I'm going to go. I wish someone would have told this to me years ago, because I cannot tell you the amount of situations where I felt guilted into doing things that I didn't want to do. And then afterwards being like, God damn it, that was not fun for me. I did not enjoy that. So I'd really recommend taking this step. Also, if you have someone who at all is pressuring you when it comes to compromising on your safety, huge red flag. Ladies and gentlemen and non-binary friends, I can tell you right now that anybody who does not take your safety in mind when you are, embarking on intimacy, again, not worth your time. Get rid of them. If they're like not wanting to use protection, if they are not listening to you when you're saying that you're uncomfortable with something and they continue doing it, if they, again, try to guilt you into all this different stuff, that should be your cue to be like, this person is not worth it. And unfortunately, a lot of times we don't do that. Speaking for myself here, I won't speak for anybody else, but a lot of times I wouldn't do that because I would want them to like me, right? So I'd be in a situation and I'd just be like, God, I want this to go well. I want them to think I'm cool. I want them to like me. They don't have the kind of character that you really should be going for if they're trying to pressure you or, again, not taking your safety in mind. So that's a big one. And the fifth tip that I have is do not feel ashamed about your experience or your lack thereof. I know for me, like I didn't have a lot of experience until I was in my early 20s. A lot of people don't have experience until their 30s. Some people their 40s. Like wherever you're at in your journey when it comes to intimacy, it is completely your journey and there is absolutely no shame in it. So if you have no experience at all and you're in a situation where you're like with somebody and they're maybe pushing you a little bit too far, you don't have to feel that fear or that shame in being like, oh, I'm just going to do it to get it over with. Because I can promise you, that is not going to be a fun experience for you. And that's not going to be a fun, first time. I have talked to many, many people who the first time that they did experience intimacy, they had felt pressured into it because they were getting to an age or getting to a point in their life where they were like, I should have experienced this by now. And it was an uncomfortable experience and it wasn't a lot of fun. I'm grateful that that was not my experience. I've had other very uncomfortable experiences in this area, but that was not my experience. But just know that wherever you're at in your journey, like we live in a culture that is so over sexualized. And so all we see in our media is like teenagers engaging in these acts and like, which is so weird. And, all of our advertisements, all of our media, all of our podcasts, everything it talks about is like that this is kind of like the norm that you should be experiencing this by a certain time. But I just want to let you know that that is not the case. There's no normal. You just kind of go through this journey and figure out what you want and when you want it. And you just don't need to feel guilty or ashamed if you have not experienced something yet. So that's my last tip, is just kind of remembering that even if you don't have experience, that shouldn't pressure you into feeling like you need to jump into something that you're not ready for. If you're not ready for it, you're not ready for it. It's okay. Don't worry about it. If you want it to happen, it'll happen eventually. But your feelings of comfort and your feelings of being valued are worth the wait if you decide to. And if you don't decide to, that's also fine. So to kind of summarize this up, I think the thing that I wish I knew when I was younger was that my experience in all of this mattered. I think, and I'll speak, as a woman in my experience, but I'm sure other people feel this as well. But I think as a woman, I just kind of felt like if I got enjoyment out of, being intimate with somebody, like that's a plus, but it wasn't a requirement. So, in a hookup situation or even in a dating situation, it was kind of like, well, hopefully this is fun. Hopefully I enjoy it. That needs to change because, again, whoever you are an equal part of that experience. And if you're not enjoying it, then it's not a successful experience. And so I think that for me, the thing that I'm working on is becoming better about being really vocal about what I want and what I don't want. So if like something's happening and I'm not enjoying it, like I'm straight up like, nah, stop. No, we're not doing this. Or if I am enjoying something, I'm like, yes, please keep doing that. That's awesome. I think if there is any way that we can kind of take away the shame of this topic, because it's so weird because there's so much pressure around it, and our media and culture talks about it so much, but there's also so much shame around it still, which is so insane to me. It's a very normal part of life if it's something that you want to have as part of your life. And there really shouldn't be shame around it. But again, your feelings matter, your boundaries matter. And if someone is not respecting those, they shouldn't be in your life. So anyway, those are my 5 tips. If you have tips from what you've experienced, please put them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your stories if you have them. And I do want to talk a little bit about this song. So I wrote a song. It's called Rough Lovin'. And it is, like I said, a song about enthusiastic consent. And it's kind of a silly song, but in some ways I kind of take this position of power in this song. I'd written this in a time where I was never in that position. I always felt taken advantage of. I always felt like, regretful and all this different stuff. So I wanted to write a song that was very much like, I know what I want and I'm going to get it. And you're going to enjoy it, because if you don't enjoy it, we're not going to do it. I guess if that makes sense. So I wanted to release this song as just kind of a testament to my own power of coming into that power. It's coming out on Friday. Like I said, you can find the link in the description. This whole podcast is part of my kind of album release. So, I'll be doing episodes like this where I'm just talking to you. I'll be doing episodes where I'm like talking to friends and other people. But I will be doing an episode for every single song, talking about kind of the meaning behind the song and why I wrote it. So please check out Rough Lovin'. It's a cool one. I'm very happy with it. But anyway, I hope that was helpful for you. Like I said, leave comments below. And just remember that you are valuable. You are worthy of love. You are worthy of being treated with respect. And I know a lot of times in our culture right now, we don't get that very often, which is really hard. But that doesn't mean that you are unworthy of it. If that's how you're continually being treated, that is something that is wrong with others rather than being a reflection of your value as a person. So I just want to encourage you. You are loved, you are cared for, and thank you for watching. I will see you next week.